Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 64 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos, joined by my friends Tettles
Yo, what's up? We're
and
back.
Trell.
Howdy.
Howdy. So Trell has been a pretty busy gamer this last week, and will continue to be a pretty busy gamer for the next week with the Keystone Masters tournament coming up next weekend. And your team has done reasonably well in time trials. How's the practice been going for the actual tournament?
We're keeping it pretty fun. We're not going like super hard, but we've been playing most nights at least for a little bit. Our time trials went pretty well. We had a 14:30 motherload run at some point in practice, and then our recorded time was 18 minutes. So don't worry about that.
So a casual 8 hours a night, yeah, normal shit.
Man, it's not 8 hours a night. There's no way. We're having fun either way.
Yeah, so that tournament is next weekend. It's I think Saturday and Sunday. Tettles and myself will be casting it, although I have no idea which matches.
I don't know anything about the casting, dude. Moves just DMs. This is like, yo, can you cast this weekend? I'm like, Drenos and I don't even think we knew what weekend Keystone Masters was.
We didn't know. Dude, they just asked me, "Are you free at this time?" And I'm like, "Well, let's see. It's a time, so therefore I'm free at it. I don't have any. I'm never busy.
I'll just show up. Yeah, I guess I'll do it. Like,
it's before Shadowlands. There's nothing going on, so yeah, probably free.
There's so many casters. I don't even know how many matches we're gonna be casting. Probably not that many.
So that is, however, going to impact our ability to do a show next week because Tettles and I are casting, although we might not be casting at the time but we don't want to. We just don't want to go live during the Keystone Masters anyway, and Trell will be playing at that time. So we're going to be taking next week off. We'll be back with episode 65 in 2 weeks' time, where we will maybe discuss the results of the Keystone Masters tournament. But let's talk a little bit. So our main topics today, before we go into more intro-y stuff, we're going to talk about tank balance on beta. We're going to talk about the raid testing that's been happening recently, and we'll cover a little bit of the big post from Watcher Ian Hezekiah. Although I think Tettles and myself both made, snap reaction vids in the hours immediately preceding that post going up.
I thought out my response on the Covenant stuff a little bit more than the snap response that I initially made, but snap response was more of like a "what the fuck is this?" and the more calm response is, well, I kind of understand what some of this means, but I don't like it.
All right, yeah. So that's the plan for our episode this week. Let's talk a little bit more about the Keystone Masters tournament, though. We have a top 8 for the time trials, and those will be the teams that will be competing in the actual event. Trell's team here, BDGG, is the 4th seed, so you guys are going to go up against the boys. Trell, isn't it true that you guys just play the boys in every tournament, in every like MDI
yeah,
or?
I swear I've played Fem's team and Rad's team, which is the boys, every single time I've done MDI or KSM. So it's just a classic match.
Yeah, and if you and Fem's team both lose, maybe you'd play them soon. I actually don't know what the bracket's like, but you wouldn't play them if you win until late.
Yeah, we don't play them at least for 3 series either way, I don't think.
Okay.
If we win against the boys, we play Andy's team in the second match.
Andy's team is Pieces Ponies here, the 1st seed. And
that'll be exciting. Andy and I have never played each other in a MDI format event, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, and you'll both get to play Brewmaster, presumably. Actually, no, I guess not. Maybe he did. He play any Brewmaster in any of the runs?
I don't know if he did for time trials. I think.
Let's go see.
We might be playing it in the cup matches though.
Ooh, that's exciting. Yeah, I have inside information about the comps that Trell's team's running. They have this spreadsheet, and we're not going to show it because we don't want to compromise the integrity of the strat. But they have this spreadsheet that's like really complicated to figure out because, of course, the rules for this tournament, for those who don't know, is that you can't play the same spec twice in the same series. So every single person on the team has to play at least 3 different specs, and most of them are playing more. And so you have this massive, complicated spreadsheet figuring out who's going to play what in each match against who. Very cool.
It gets crazy because like sometimes you have an underrot next to a shrine and a freehold in a series, and so you have a comp for each of those that work in that rule restriction. And then in another series, you have an underrot next to like a Taldazar and Toldagor. So you have to have a comp that works in underrot in both those situations and doesn't copy specs on the other maps. It's actually really difficult to figure out.
I think that I hate to hear that a lot.
So-
I feel like
You got. Yeah,
I was gonna say, from a player perspective, that does not sound that fun, right? For me.
Yeah, it took us a couple hours to figure out exactly what we could play, but in the end, I think since we can all play, like all of us are playing at least 4 different specs, some of us like 5 to 6 in this tournament. And in the end, I think it's really cool that we can do that and make it work. Because honestly, we're having a ton of fun practicing. So,
I mean, but at the end of the day, you have to throw caution to the wind about like, because you would otherwise have to be practicing Underrot with effectively 3 different comps or something like that, right? Basically, you have to do every dungeon with like multiple comps.
There is one dungeon that we have to play 2 different group comps in based on the match. So that is a slight problem.
Exactly.
I mean, I imagine it's possible you'd want to do that for more than one dungeon, even, but you try to minimize just how big of an impact that has on your practice. I think it's nice to get it down to 1. That's probably pretty good tech from you guys.
Yeah, we did it for everything except for 1, I think. Which when you add a second set to practice for 1 dungeon, it kind of turns 8 dungeons to practice into 9 dungeons, or like 8.5 kind of. And so like that amount of practice alone is pretty daunting. You want to minimize that as best you can in these kind of things.
If you had unlimited time, do you think you'd do that for more dungeons? Like, do you think you'd set up multiple comps for more dungeons so you could get more of that flexibility in the other ones?
Possibly. It's hard to say because like once you swap one thing, usually you have to swap a lot of other things.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely a pretty fun tournament to like theorize about, and I'm glad you guys are having fun practicing it. I do also worry about what the incentives would be if it was like a heavily prize structured tournament, you know, with really big name teams, and like, you know, if this is a tournament that was like MDI level of importance. I hope that it would still be fun with this format, but I'm a lot more worried about it. I think it's really cool though for this.
I'm not convinced once they said that they had to practice like different comps on the same map. That seems just awful.
I don't think this is a play for MDI.
Yeah,
but still, I'm still gonna withhold judgment until I see how fun the actual weekend is. If all the players like just love playing in it, then there's a good chance. Like, because like you said, you had 1 dungeon that you had to double up on. Even if there's like 2 or 3 dungeons you have to double up on, that's not so bad, right? It's not the end of the world.
Depends on how serious you're taking it, right?
Yeah, it definitely depends on how serious you want to play.
Yeah, so the main problem is that it just makes like extra practice time even more important. Right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Practice time scales even better with this format than it does in regular. Yeah, I don't know. It's rough. It's hard.
MDI already has a problem where like the favorite wins, I don't even know, 85, 90% of the time or whatever. I bet the higher seed team, not even just, actually, no, I don't want to say higher seed team because that's not always indicative of who's favorite. The favorite wins, I would say probably like some astronomically large amount of the time, right, in MDI matches.
So, yeah, and there's also, you got to be careful with how much practice you're rewarding and incentivizing. Because there have been times in MDI's history where we've had like months-long practice grinds.
That was only 1 weekend though, so that was like kind of okay.
Yeah,
but it was also still terrible to play. It was unfun to play for me at least.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a really difficult challenge to solve, but I'm glad that Keystone Masters is out here doing these experiments because I think that's it's a good way to actually see how these potential rules changes would look.
Yeah, I love KSM, and honestly, I think it's good in this case because you only have to prep for 1 week and for 1 set of affixes on each dungeon. But in MDI, if it was the 6-week gauntlet of practicing every day, you know, and then also having to change affixes week to week, and then different matches and different maps in each match, you'd have to like rearrange your entire spreadsheet, you know, every week. That would be really challenging and probably madness-inducing.
Yeah.
All right, we've also had Sloot has been doing the rounds of specs and classes, talking with like prominent members of the community of those specs and getting their opinions. Like, he had Evade and Kib on for the Demon Hunter show recently. But for the Balance Druids, they couldn't find anybody. So Tettles got to go on that show for some inexplicable reason.
I mean, welfare is a hell of a drug.
So how was your conversation with Sloop for the his Balance Druid thing? All I know is that it had the best Twitter thumbnail I've ever seen.
I thought it went really well. I think it's nice that he's stepping up and doing a bunch of those. I think he's really been enjoying learning about a lot of the different classes and specs.
Yeah, dude, beta it's such a rough place right now because like, nobody's conduits or soulbinds work. Like,
don't worry, my conduits work. They're broken. One of them gives me 100% crit, so it's definitely working.
Okay, you're not having to like re-roll your character every couple dungeons, or
I just don't use. Okay, balance has one potency conduit that's okay, and then like the covenant specific potency conduit that's okay. I have one slot that's broken on my character that I've been using. I don't give a fuck about that slot anyways. It's only like a 0.5% damage increase. Fuck it.
Yeah, it's been really rough though in beta. People have been just like losing soulbind and conduit progress for the last couple months. It's a really big pain. Like for raid testing, it's obnoxious. But
yeah, like every time you log in, you lose a link in your soulbind tree.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I really hope that they fix it soon though, because it feels like this is really important for getting the good tuning testing that they need.
I'm confused as to how it's still a problem. It's been a month, or longer.
It is kind of wild. In addition to being on Sludge Show, Tettles, you and I have both been making some YouTube videos recently too, and we're both going to be on another podcast this coming week while Trell is busy practicing for KSM. We're going to be on the Peace of Mind podcast, which is.
Can you remind me what time that's at?
Tuesday.
No way it is. Do you know what time it is?
I think it's like 30 minutes before the Titanforge podcast would start.
Oh, great. Okay, I think. Do that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, yeah. No, not 30 minutes before the Titanforge podcast. It's 3 Eastern, so noon Pacific, so exact same time.
Same time as Titanforge podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I knew that. I always know the times of my commitments as well, Tettles. dude,
why are we the same? Why are we the fucking same? We're just
absolute messes of human beings, just like hurtling through life, no care for when anything is.
Can you do this? Looks at date. I'm like, I'm not doing anything on Tuesday. I don't see why I couldn't.
Yeah, we'll see how it works with the old sleep schedule, but I've got the alarm to hack that one if need be.
Oh god.
So that's gonna be cool.
Trell, the real adult here, looking vaguely disappointed.
Heck, that's too accurate.
So it's gonna be pretty cool though. We're gonna talk about Mythic Plus. There's a lot of guests on there as well. So maybe if I'm low on sleep, I'll get to just kind of hide and not actually talk very much. That's always the hope. But here's the tweet announcing that from Pieces. We got Fem, Wildy, Andy, Harudra, and then me and Tettles. Really rounding out just an excellent cast of.
It's like Pieces plus Darkness and Tettles.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's how it goes.
And of course, Cyber, the host for that show. So pretty cool. I don't know. Did you guys catch the first Peace of Mind show that they did?
Oh, which part of it?
Yeah, with like THD.
Oh, okay. I saw the part of it with Nagurans Ironic. That was the part that I ended up watching a little bit of. They were talking about like world first rating. I thought that was pretty interesting, and then how it relates to casting as well. So I thought that was dope.
Yeah, pretty cool. So that's something to look forward to in the next week, and maybe that you can listen to or watch that in place of the Titanforge podcast that we're not doing next week. But then come back. Don't just switch to them forever. Come back after,
please.
Yeah, stop advertising someone else's podcast,
bro. Please. We need to be.
We need this.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
they're good guys. I'm sure it's good content. Hope everyone gets a chance to listen.
Okay, all right. Let's cycle back a little bit to Keystone Masters before we continue with our show much further, because there are a couple questions that I actually have for you, Trell, about what you think it's going to be, what you think is going to show up in the tournament. So, is there any kind of specs or classes that you think will be popular in this tournament that didn't really seem like it?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, I think Mage is really good in this tournament because not only do they have full corruption now, it just makes them infinitely powerful and can delete any pull once they have their minute Mage build all set up and ready to go, But because you can't have triple hunter, a lot of these dungeons, the best runs are kind of the best timed runs in history are presented in a triple range comp. And there's not many ranged classes that are currently good in an MDI setting. So
yeah,
it's like,
are there others?
Mage.
What do you do for the third slot in those comps? Are you
Did
playing?
you say sometimes Warlock? Hold up.
Yeah, some of the Warlock players were doing a lot of damage at Freehold in the time trials. Shelly was doing a really good job. But
Other than that, anything cool that you guys have been playing or you've seen other teams playing that you think looks nice?
yeah, the format kind of forces some off picks sometimes, which is cool. Like we've seen and doing ourselves Vengeance, Prop Pele, Assassination Brewmaster, Resto Druid. There's all kinds of like pretty good specs that you wouldn't normally see in MDI because they have unlimited specs, but because of the lockouts here, you can see them showcased a little bit, and they really don't make too much of a difference depending on the dungeon.
Yeah, and you
Like-
always get like for the most important dungeon, you always get your Prot Warrior and or your Mistweaver, and then you can play in the ones with the less impactful affixes. You get to play the other stuff.
Yeah, like sometimes Mistweaver is definitely required because of the pulls you're doing and the nature of the damage on the group. So you plan around that for sure. Prot Warrior is just solves threat issues, solves lots of issues, but sometimes Prot Warrior has some disadvantages that you can slot in a Vengeance Demon Hunter for and be totally fine in some cases, like Toligor or Shrine. So
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
teams.
surprised we haven't seen more Frost DKs. You can play Frost as well, right? Like you can play Unholy, then
Yeah.
play Frost.
you could play a Frost and Unholy in the same match and the same map as well.
I think the only person I've seen play Frost is Vibes, right? From what it looks like on the time trial leaderboards, at least. Because I feel like Frost is actually really strong, but maybe it's only strong on live keys. It's hard to say.
I don't know. We haven't really tried Frost.
Yeah, there is.
Supposedly, it does
but-
like the same damage as Mage on like ish on live stuff, but again, that doesn't always translate well. I know they run like that Frost Scythe build and stuff, but I don't know how that is burst damage wise.
My favorite thing about this format is that everybody gets their pet spec. If they have a pet spec, like the fact that they are good at that is enough to bring it into like the top 3 specs for that person to play. And so
Yeah.
you'll see it from them a lot. I hope we get to see some really nice comps battling it out. I really hope the main thing I hope is that teams have come up with different answers for dungeons so that we because like even if we see 15 different specs across 3 dungeons, if it's the same 5v5 in each map, I feel like that would be less exciting than if it was like 2 completely different comps in each map bashing into each other. But we'll have to wait to see how that goes.
Yeah, like for us personally, sometimes we have full meta comp with like Prot Warrior, Mistweaver, Hunter, DH, DK, like the cookie cutter build. But for some, we're actually all playing on our main specs on live, so it's gonna be pretty good. I think it's a nice mix of both.
All right, so we'll have to see how that works out next weekend. We'll, of course, again, not have our show and watch that instead. And then we'll come back and cover what happened in the Keystone Masters event and probably a bunch of Shadowlands news the following week. Let's move on to our rest of our show, though. First, we have our...
like pre-patch too, right? Holy shit.
Maybe.
Wait.
Do we know when that is yet?
It can't be that much that much longer away.
I want to say like 2 weeks away, so it's 1 month before
Yeah,
Shadowlands.
I guess. I don't know.
So maybe.
It's impossible to tell. I don't know how much warning we're gonna get. Don't they have to give like 2 weeks warning for the PvP season ending?
Do they have to? No.
Aren't they legally required to?
It's like the same legal requirement if you ask a cop if they're a cop, they're legally required to tell you that they're a cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our tip of the week segment. My tip of the week is up first. This one's a little bit of a different one. This is for anybody who's doing some mount collecting as our expansion nears the end. There's this website, simplearmory.com, and you can look and it'll have all these grayed out bars where you don't have mounts for all these different categories. So a really good way of seeing that. And it has this planner button. So if you click show planner up here after you've done your character in the mount section, it'll literally give you a step-by-step optimized run to go to all the places that you could drop mount from. So, start in Orgrimmar, port to Uldum, run Vortex Pinnacle to try and get Drake and Northwind, all the way down, doing all these different places to try and get all these different mount drops. So,
is this what you've been doing lately?
I haven't been doing this, but this is what I would be doing if I were logging into World of Warcraft, probably. So,
okay.
If you're somebody who's looking for something to do in WoW, and mount collecting is something that's in your wheelhouse, this is a way to do it faster. So that's my tip. All right, Charles, what's your tip of the week?
Oh, I want to jump in and say real quick, the Keystone Masters tournament will be on +20s. Someone asked in chat, but
Oh, okay.
for my tip of the week, for professions in Shadowlands, I think it's worth picking up one of the armor crafting professions for your character, at least for the start. And then, like for Mythic Plus, I usually settle into alchemy and engineering. But at the start, I'm gonna plan on going leatherworking engineering. I'm sure there will be some kind of leatherworking item I can build for myself for raid that's like heroic item level. There's usually something like that, right? And plus, you can build the base piece that you need to craft legendaries for, which will likely be really expensive for a while. So
Yeah, because you can purchase them off the auction house if you're made of monies, but I actually suspect that the cost on those is going to come down pretty quickly on the legendary crafted stuff. But maybe that's fiction. It's hard to say.
Yeah, Inscription makes the things that assign stats to your legendaries as well. So those will be sought after, but that's the only thing that scribes make anymore. So
Ever.
yeah. And
Are
Vantage
Vantage
runes,
runes
I
gone?
guess. Yeah,
No,
Vantage
they
runes are
haven't.
there.
They're
Dude, on beta right now, Vantage runes are applied on the start of the cast, not the end. So you can't even use a Vantage rune if you wanted to. You click it, and then by the time the cast finishes, it's like you already have one of those active, so it doesn't even consume it. And it applies the buff at the start of the cast.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wait, that's bad for inscriptionists.
So right now you just have one reusable Vantage rune on beta. I'm sure that
Kiev is so mad.
I'm sure they'll fix that. Let's move on to our Tettles tip of the week, which is always a clip of the week instead.
Dude, this one was cursed. I felt so dumb whenever I did this, actually.
All right, Muezla's casting Shadow Reality. Let's see what Tettles does.
Oh no. There's an edge here.
Tettles, you want to run what happened here by me real quick?
You go into the Moizala portal and it teleports you to a different platform. It's supposed to. However, I ran too early and didn't stop and just locked off the edge like an idiot.
Let's run that one more time, just for the fans at home. We watch this clip again. Yeah, the portals. It looks like they're there. Oh no, it's a little late. Do you have to click on it, or can you just walk into it?
No. You just walk into
You
it.
just stand
Okay.
on it, yeah.
Well, that's that is pretty embarrassing. You hate to see it. All right. Good clip. Good clip.
What do you guys think about that boss fight?
Fight sucks.
Yeah. It's a little weird, like the way the portals work. If you start the boss on the south side of the instance, so you can spawn at 4 different spots on the ring around the main map.
They changed how the portals spawn now, and now you get like way fucking more. But yeah,
like more than 8.
Oh no, not more than 8. Sorry.
So there's 8 portals, right? And there's 2 on the left side. There's 2 on like the front left. There's 2 on the front right, and there's 2 on the right side. And like each of those 2 go to a certain part of the ring around the instance, but only if you start on the south side. And if you engage the boss on like the west side for now, the portals only lead to 2 spots total. So it's like you want to run around to the south and start the boss there until they fix that, I guess. I don't know if it's intended, but
yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest issue of that fight is the fact that the damage that you do to the boss is actually just largely irrelevant, and that basically it's Priestess Alunza except 1,000 times harder. I really feel like that fight sucks.
Oof.
I feel like it's pretty interesting, but the tank hit is like really, really overpowered right now, currently.
All right, speaking of tanks on beta, let's have a little talk about the state of tanks in beta. In particular, we've seen some recent tank tuning changes, but I think over the long haul, over the last 6 months of Shadowlands, there's been this kind of trend that a couple of tank players have identified on Twitter. People like Now, I think, have made these tweets about how like when alpha and beta started, everybody felt like strong on a lot of different tanks. And now we're kind of at a point where everything except for Blood DK is feeling pretty weak to play on beta. I don't know, Charlie, you've of course been playing live recently, but when you were last playing beta, how much did this line up with your experience?
Yeah, that's really accurate. Like everything Now said in his latest tweet about it is like spot on. He was talking about how like 3 of the tanks felt really good to play. They had good self-sustain. You could keep yourself alive for the most part. It felt good to like be good at your class because you could do more and like get yourself out of a bind if your healer dies, for example. But now with them nerfing the 2 best tanks, Brewmaster and Vengeance, they're kind of brought down to the level of the other tanks, which is fine in a balance standpoint because tanks should be relatively balanced, right? But it means that now all 6 tanks, except for maybe Blood currently, are just feeling like walking healer mechanics where you can do your best, but you're going to bleed out no matter what you do unless you get healed.
As a point of reference, tanks also actually just hate to ever be healed by a healer. Like if tanks had it their way in dungeons, they would absolutely just be self-sufficient and never have to receive a heal from a healer.
Absolutely. I mean, it's good to have like a few fights where you definitely need a lot of healing as like a test for your healer. Like Shadow Zul, if it was more balanced but still hard, I think that'd be a perfect example. But if every single pack you walk into, you need like so much healing, or else you're just dead. It's not very fun for a tank player.
I mean, healers don't like healing tanks either, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, more often than not, especially Blood DK, dude. Healers always complain. They're like, I track their runic power, and I never really know when they're gonna heal. They're like, their health bar is like a yo-yo, and blah blah blah, and all these like other things, right?
It's really hard to know when a Blood DK needs healing versus when they don't, because at 20% health, it could be either one. Like, they could either be totally chilling and about to death strike to full, or they're gonna die.
I mean, Brew's the only one with like real damage smoothing. All the other tanks are like, I mean, all the tanks have some form, but like, it's not to the level of where your healer actively enjoys healing them.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, I mean, obviously, I feel like tanks should require external healing. Like, you shouldn't be able to just keep yourself up through.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I actually agree with that. I actually disagree.
That's how the tanks were up until this last week. Like, you could just keep like 1 or 2 hots on a Vengeance Demon Hunter if you're a Resto Druid, and they'd be fine. Like, they would use that extra healing to plan their own defensives and self-healing use around it, and it would just keep them up, and you could largely ignore them, which is, I think, what every tank player would prefer, and probably most healers as well. But now we're just going to be damage sponges again, and maybe that'll scale up to be like current Prot Warrior levels eventually later in Season 1, but for now at like heroic item level, I think it was that I was testing it, it's not going to feel that great at that point.
I think I think a larger issue for Mythic Plus like role balancing is the fact that healers don't really do a lot in dungeons as it currently stands. But then their way to make healers do more is to nerf tanks, which feels kind of out of place as well.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, I don't know. It is a tough challenge to solve from their perspective, but I agree that tanking should feel like you should not die if you're a tank and you choose not to die for like a 10-second period, right? It's like if you're playing well and you stop receiving heals for a little bit and you've been receiving heals up until then, and like, you know, now you're taking quite a bit of damage, like a well-played tank should be able to live for a little bit without, like, by using their cooldowns well, by being defensive in a good way. Like, you should be able to bridge the gap between your healing being received in a way that right now, it feels like for everything except for DK, you just get in these spots, and it's been like this in BFA in various spots, where you're just like, okay, in 5 seconds, no matter which buttons I press, I am going to die, and there's no combination of cooldowns I can use that is going to save me here. I'm purely at the mercy of my healer, you know, being active and healing me for 100% of this dungeon, unless you're Blood DK.
In addition to that, Blood DK has an EHP problem where, like, exactly the scenario of what you said is very, very relevant to them because of their EHP issue. Basically, they will be put in positions where if they're going to be overkilled, they actually just have no way of stopping themselves from dying beforehand unless they're going to be able to get an external.
Right, which is a problem for really high keys, but other than that is not really a problem for most content for Blood DK.
Sludgefist?
Sludgefist, the first time we tested him was a little hurty, yeah. It's not like, I don't know. Tanks. It's not actually one-shotting though. It just does like 50% of your health, which you know, Blood DK, it's difficult to play in that situation, but it's not like running into the limitations of the class like you would in like a +20 key.
I think it boils down to, like, tank players have fun in this game by using their creativity and their knowledge to keep themselves alive. Like, usually tank players don't get to do a lot of damage. They don't get to top the meters. Sometimes they do when their class is broken, like Prot Warrior Season 2. But the like DPS players don't get a rush out of doing a lot of damage or beating their previous record. Tank players get a rush out of living hard situations or doing a pull correctly that requires a lot of thought, you know? And so them taking away that freedom of living creatively through other people's mistakes is just no fun for anybody, and just discourages a lot of people from playing tank, I feel.
I actually think that they should bring back Vengeance because of this situation. The system, not the
spec also, but the
not
system.
the spec. But the Vengeance did just get fucking removed from the game. But the
not
system,
not
I
as
feel
bad
like
as Brew. Brew got hit with the ion cannon in this most recent hit.
Yeah,
both not good.
You know, in the patch notes, it made it look like they nerfed Slusher Brew a lot, but they added Stagger back. But in reality, they also nerfed base Stagger, and so Stagger is lower than before, and Slusher Brew is now basically like almost a waste of a GCD if you're playing high enough content. Like your Slusher Brew is going to get absorbed before your next GCD pressing it once you get to high enough content. And so like Brew is just like destroyed at the moment. I feel it may be worse than most of the other tanks at the moment.
Yeah, both Brew and Guardian have this problem where like their thing is flat and not scaling, right? Like Celestial Brew, Frenzied Regen on beta, both of those aren't percent health based. They're not based on percentage damage taken recently. They're just like flat. And so they really scale poorly into like Mythic rating or high Mythic plus, compared to stuff like Deathstrike, which scales with the damage you've taken recently. And therefore, the more damage you're taking, the more you're healing yourself. And so increasing incoming damage on a Death Knight doesn't increase their effective healing required by the same amount. It's less. That makes them scale really nicely into Raid.
So circling back, I think Vengeance, the system should definitely be brought back, most notably for Raid, right? Because there is creativity, like Trouble was stating, for Mythic Plus, right? You're allowed to kind of express yourself in terms of like the pulls you're doing, but in Raid you actually just don't fucking do anything. You just sit there.
So the Vengeance system was one where based on your recent damage taken, you got an attack power buff, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know for how long. I didn't really play it back then.
Yeah, I mean, I all I know is there was some degen stuff you do to farm Vengeance.
Okay,
right?
there was some sitting shenanigans, but like that wasn't on. I don't know. More often than not, that was on. That was because of Brewmaster Monk being inherently broken back in Mist of Pandaria, not always due to the fact that the Vengeance itself was bad.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about bringing back the Vengeance system.
I think that tanks need something more than what they
tanks
currently have.
Do certain. I mean, I'm more of Trell's perspective, where I think that tanks should be able to like use their abilities to survive difficult to survive situations, rather than like by being an active tank you do a lot of damage, which is kind of what Vengeance said, right?
Yeah, I like the idea of Vengeance. I think I like a toned down version of it more so. Like in Legion, Vengeance Demon Hunters, same word but different thing here. Could stand in magic damage and get an extra damage boost. I can't remember what it was called, but basically their tattoo passive allowed them to like gain attack power by standing magic damage.
Yeah, okay,
so I think it's cool, like a minor boost like that.
That kind of thing. Yeah, I think little mechanics like that are definitely cool little ways to min-max that don't really like punish people who don't do them. I mostly think that they need to look at these situations where a good tank player has an unexpected event happen, and instead of being able to play around that themselves, they're relying on the healer playing around it well in order to survive. Because that's I think the core problem with tanks is that there's so many spots where your mistakes are going to cost the group, and your good play is not going to be relevant. And that's really like, it means that good tanking is still really important, right? Because you make fewer mistakes, but it doesn't mean that you get these like positive, proactive plays that I think are really rewarding, and that a lot of the other specs do get to bring to the table. Like as a tank, the only way you can do that is with like a good interrupt or a good CC on something, but not with actual tanking related brilliance.
Yeah, I think the best example of it is like, say you're on a really hard boss in a Mythic Plus dungeon, your entire group dies, and the boss is at like 10%, and you're like, this is a moment where I can solo this boss as a tank and feel really proud of myself, and my group will be like, oh, thank God we don't have to fight the boss again. You know, like that's a great feeling if you know you can do that, and it feels good to execute it and barely survive. But then if you get to that situation and you can't live, you're just like, all right, I guess I'll just go walk into the nearest puddle to die faster so we can repull the boss, because I can't do it.
Oh yeah, like watching Nerf, I think in their World First 29 Toldagor, when he was like the only person alive at the end of Torghast. He had to use like 3 cooldowns to survive a Deadeye shot into explosive burst with a stack already.
Yeah.
It was really, really awesome thing to see. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that those moments are important as well. Like, I mean, you know, not every tank is going to be able to capitalize on them, and that's fine, right? Like, that happens.
Do you not believe that? Do you not believe that there is something inherently lost in raid though, with raid tanking?
I'm not sure raid tanking has ever been like super sick gameplay wise, and I don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how much like just making tanks do double damage or whatever with vengeance is the way to make it better. Like maybe it's better.
Gives you
Raid
something
tanks get
to
the
do
enjoyment out of killing the boss. Like they get the enjoyment of like leading the group to the kill.
But you don't
rather
do anything
than-
on progression, right? Like infrequently do you do anything
I mean,
on progression.
the thing about being a raid tank is that like over the course of 200 progression pulls, dying 7 times versus dying 3 times is like that's the difference between a good tank and a raid tank, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you're doing is you're just trying to make it so that you are never, you know, causing a wipe. And
but there's no self-expression, right? You don't actually you're doing full damage. Like you're already maximized your full your damage to the fullest. There's not really much more you really can do, and there's nothing for you to even do outside of
dude. You got
trying to live.
You got clutch. Every tank has some kind of external play now. Like even DK has AMZ to drop, but every other tank has like off healing that is actually pretty potent. Most specs off healing, except for Guardian Druids, who for some reason don't off heal.
Hold on, wait.
Even if you're like
like
Resto
a pretty
Affinity,
Swiftman, yeah.
you're just like you're nowhere near as good at healing as like a Brewmaster or a Paladin casting their heals.
Hell yeah.
They get part of the wild now. Hold on, Dratnos.
Even then, man, it's
no. It's sick now. You don't get it.
All right. So like, there's a little bit of that, but yeah, I think raiding is a little bit less about like freedom, creativity, and expression than Mythic Plus is. Like, it's a lot more of this kind of like collective group effort, and it's a lot less about doing something unique and different, and a lot more about like executing a plan really effectively. So I think that I don't know. I don't think it's as huge of a problem in raid for tanks to be missing out on that aspect. A lot of people though think that raid tanking is really boring compared to Mythic Plus tanking. For I think that reason. I'm just not sure how much better it gets by just making it so that the tank is like second on damage.
It's because Mythic Plus tanks are control freaks who want to lead the group and want to control literally every single thing that goes on in a dungeon just to a T, and they want you to just listen to them at all given moments, and literally just if they could be 5 people in the dungeon, they would be. Raid tanks are the most reliable members of your guild who show up on a week-by-week basis and typically are an officer.
Raid tanks are the people who have been forced to tank so that their guild can play. Yeah.
So the other 18 members of your guild can have fun. They're the ultimate betas, whereas the Mythic Plus tank is the ultimate Chad. So it's just a dichotomy.
All right. Speaking of raid, we've had some raid testing occur as well recently. Yesterday, even, which I participated in. Although we didn't have, dude, my guild can't muster like 20 people, so we were just raid testing with like 17 people, these bosses. But it was okay because it was fine actually. We were making some decent progression. We had Council of Blood, which last time we talked about it, the dance mechanic was we thought really clunky. It has changed dramatically. Now it was bugged for most of testing, but I think they fixed it right at the end of testing. But now, instead of it bringing up a vehicle UI, you have to get into your spot, and then there are these like dancer NPCs that will move in a pattern, and you have to move in that same pattern with them, which I think is a lot better. I think this is a lot better because first of all, it doesn't give you any like the old vehicle one. It basically just like gave you 4 buttons, and then a big thing popped up on your screen that was like press this button, and it's so easy.
Somehow, it's the shittiest version of Equitorque possible. Was the vehicle one.
This is what it looks like now though. You go run into your spot. Here's a clip from Sleet's stream on this Wowhead page, and then the NPCs move forward, you move forward with them, then the NPCs move to the left, you move to the left with them, and everybody who screws up gets stunned for 30 seconds. And it's actually not that bad as long as you're not a tank. Like the thing about this fight is that everything about it seems so undertuned right now and easy that all no matter what happens to you, it's not that bad. Also, you could PvP trinket out of this 30-second stun. So
Probably Bop.
yeah, we're certainly if that stays possible, that'll be a really good way to just make this mechanic not do anything. Overall, though, a good change to a fight that otherwise was looking really lame.
Yeah, so gimmicky fights like this fight, like Blackwater Behemoth was another gimmicky fight in recent history. Zanesh, I would say, is a gimmicky fight. A lot of these gimmicky fights, like that, will have like one mechanic typically that's fairly polarizing. They actually need that one mechanic to be pretty good and to not actually deter from the experience. Mechatork was another example. They need that one gimmicky mechanic to not deter from the experience and instead feel like it's really a part of the fight. And I feel like they have done a good job of by removing the vehicle window. They've changed that fight for the better for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what it'll be like on heroic and normal. I wonder if it'll still have that old system because the mythic version might be a step up in difficulty for. I don't know how much an average normal raider would be able to do the mythic dance reliably.
It literally cannot be harder than Mechatork. It literally cannot be harder than heroic Mechatork, man.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe they just make it really slow or something. Because mythic, it's like medium speed. We also had Shriekwing testing. That was another fun boss. They have done a lot to make this boss much more doable than it used to be. The sonar pulses are really slow now and easy to dodge. So the whole fight, you don't
have to line of sight him the whole entire time. You only have to line of sight him whenever he's actually casting his ability.
Yeah, it's like one tick instead of like an 8-second channel as well. It's a lot better. Although the Jurassic Park phase is still a challenge. It's still a pretty big challenge. So how this phase works on Mythic is somebody's carrying your lantern around and all of you are running around and you need to avoid all these little sonar pulses and you need to line of sight the boss every time he casts. And if a random person screws it up, they're going to get horrified for 5 seconds, then jumped on by the boss. If the lantern carrier screws up or gets hit by that jump from somebody else who screwed up, the raid wipes. It's over. It just instantly kills everybody.
It's definitely the hardest initial boss I've seen in a very fucking long
the
time.
whole lantern mechanic being so unforgiving it's really cool. But like basically, there's all these mechanics you have to do, and if the lantern ever gets hit or the lantern carrier ever gets hit, it's over. It's just
it makes me wonder why it's a first boss, but I mean it is a good fight.
Yeah, it's cool.
I don't necessarily want to complain too much, but it does call to question like why is this the initial boss in the instance? But
so how does it compare to like Commander Savara from Eternal Palace? Because she was pretty difficult for a first boss.
I would say this is a different kind.
Hard.
This is not like damage numbers or healing numbers. This is just like there's a lot of pass-fail checks, which is a really rare to see that in a first boss fight. But
yeah, for real.
I think it's cool. Like it's a fun fight.
Yeah. So Savara was hard because it was numerically hard. Like I think the very explicit point is that it's a pass-fail, and you actually can just immediately wipe the whole group.
Yeah. Here, let's watch a little clip from Sloot Stream again of the first boss from their testing. This is that Jurassic Park phase, as my guild calls it, where you're just trying to hide from the thing as it's chasing you, and you're slowly taking damage from being in the AoE of this lantern. And then you got to just keep lining the boss and dodging all these things. And if one person gets hit, there's a good chance they'll die. If the lantern person gets hit here, then and that's what happened right there. Then the lantern is going to get hit by the boss, and everybody dies instantly.
Good night.
Very, so what, did you get fear there? Oh yeah, horrified.
Yeah, the horrify is what happens either when you get hit or when the lantern person gets hit. But what happened in this clip is the lantern was in line of sight of the boss, I think, during a cast, and that's what ended it.
Interesting boss. Yeah, that's really weird for a first boss.
Yeah, it's it took a while to kind of figure out because it's got this mechanic where you need to have the lantern debuff to see what's going on the ground. I don't know. It's going to be so weird for like I think this is going to be an extremely difficult boss to pug, but the good news is that when we start getting to the point where groups are like trying to pug this place, it's going to be a case of like if you can down Shriekwing, you can probably go and kill like 3 more bosses pretty easily. For pugs, I think. Absolutely. So that's nice. I kind of prefer that to like the Champions of the Light thing, where any group in the world could kill Champions of the Light and BOD, and then you get to Grong and like 80% of groups that could kill champs couldn't kill Grong, and you just had these 1 out of 8 lockouts. You're just like, man, I wanted Grong.
I prefer the first scenario as well. I like that. Mm-hmm. Like you struggle against one boss, and then you kind of have like a moment of release once you kill. Like, all right, let's go farm the next 2 bosses.
Yeah, it is. I think this will be a pretty restrictive mythic first boss. That like I think there will be a lot of people who often kill some mythic bosses that won't be able to do it this tier. because of this boss being here. All right, and then we also tested some Stone Legion generals, which we weren't able to get too far in this one because we didn't have them. We were down to like 16 people at this point, so we we couldn't see too much, but not too much had changed about it. Yeah, unbelievable. Trell yoinked a Gildy, but it was it continues to be a fun looking fight. It's got this mechanic where like all these ads come down and they all do something at 30% health until you kill them. So you have to like focus ads down once they get to 30% and murder them from there. Raid testing was it was pretty fun. We played a couple different tank specs as well. I played Blood DK.
You think you're going to be playing Blood DK this patch?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that they'll get hit with some nerfs soon, but even if they get a small set of nerfs, I think it's still going to be a really good choice. Like AMZ in particular is so nice to have. We played a little bit of like Brew and Vengeance on a couple of these fights. Not me, but my co-tank did. I think Blood is where I want to be though.
Venge is now like really, really scuffed. Unfortunately, like they got brutalized this week.
I played a little bit of Venthyr as well. I mostly played Night Fae, but I played a little bit of Venthyr. And
that's weird.
Yeah, I mostly just wanted to try it out, which now's the time because I'm not going to be able to do it when when Shadowlands comes out.
No, if you selected Night Fae, Ian told me that you would actually be able to try out Venthyr if you wanted to go it without any restrictions.
Okay, well, I don't believe
on a target dummy.
No, you would be able to go and do it
in the leveling zone, right?
Go to Night Fae.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, it would take me 2 weeks to go back Night Fae. All right. Very cool.
Whatever you present it like I just said, it sounds fine, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. I don't know.
Until I give you the colossal downside.
It's like you can't actually test it in hard content. You have to commit to it first, and then you're able to test it.
Right. Unless you're beta testing, which this is going to be an expansion where I will be spending a lot more time than usual on like raid testing and PTR and stuff, so that I can try out how different covenants play on different bosses, because that's the only time you can do that. And yeah, that's I guess the main point from Watcher's post development update. Not the main point. There's actually a lot of good stuff in this post, but one of the points was the covenant system. They've doubled down on it for now, making it makes me feel like the soonest point now we could see that change is 9.1. I feel like that's the new hope. There's no longer a hope for this to be changed before release.
Yeah, I think the hope's dead for now.
I don't know.
I think the next crusade is to make conduits swappable more than once a week, right?
That would be nice. That would be really nice. Right now, it's basically
Moonkin conduits seem like super scuffed. I don't know how conduits are for other specs though.
But the main thing is that swapping between Moonkin and Resto, right, is like giga scuffed.
Well, but you can use a different soulbind guy.
Right. Okay, but like
that's
what
bad.
If there's one that's really good?
It really could be worse. Right?
It could be. But
well, it's like I'm thinking of the Kyrian tree on the first two Kyrian soulbinds. If you're early on in the season where we only have like renown 14 or whatever, and we only have 3 nodes down the tree at that current moment, and you want to like swap between Brewmaster and Windwalker, like one of the soulbind trees straight up gives you 5% burst at that point, and the other one gives you like 1 second CD reduction on some movement speed ability, like something really unbalanced, you know.
I think that it's bad, right? Like I cannot defend it at all. I do think that that's terrible, and any point where you're like, especially if you're swapping roles, where you swap from something that is actually giving you tangible benefit to literal 0 gain, is a substantial problem.
Yeah, so, I mean, THD had a description of this that I thought was actually a pretty good way to visualize this, particularly if you haven't played with covenants and conduits on beta, is that the covenant abilities are basically like a major essence power, right? And then the soulbind / conduit system is basically like a minor essence system. And we're basically moving to a world now where you can change your major essence once every 2 weeks, and you can change your minor essence once every 1 week. And other than that, you're locked in on those for a given spec. And your spec, you can only use each minor essence for 1 spec. You can't use it across multiple ones. It's rough. It's I don't know. It would be easier to know how much of a challenge it would be if the covenants or if the conduits weren't just so scuffed on beta anyways right now, where your conduit's just a random one breaks every time you log in, so you can't. It's hard to identify the full impact of this yet, but that I agree would be. I feel like that's a more realistic change that we could still get in. Obviously the covenants aren't going to get changed until 9.1 at the earliest, but the conduit swap is maybe still on the table, right?
I sure hope so. Yeah, it's gonna make it so hard to multi-spec. Like poor druid players and any class that has tank healing and DPS, honestly.
Dude, I don't understand how they made like this expansion substantially more alt friendly, yet made it like the literal least multi-spec friendly shit I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I think it's literally easier to multi-spec in Classic than it is on Live. Or for Shadowlands, rather.
I mean, all that it takes in Classic is some gold, right, to swap spec?
5,000 gold or something, yeah.
5,000? Okay.
I don't think it's 5. Maybe it's
5, is it like an increasing cost?
I want to say yes.
Okay.
I can't remember.
I don't remember the last time. I mean, I played back when
50.
It's 50 gold. Okay, that is quite a bit, right?
It's not that much.
50,000 is gold cap apparently. Or no. This is like really high up there, but yeah, 50 gold sounds more right.
I don't know. My thing that I took issue with in the Covenant system was discussion of the ripcord in this. So they're talking about how and I talked about this in my video that I made about this when it came out. Pulling on the thread or the ripcord, as it were, would unravel the entire fabric of the system, which I felt like it was a little bit of a bait and switch, given that they told us there was a ripcord they could pull if they needed to.
Okay, so I bet there's been internal talks. Let me try to play devil's advocate here. I don't believe that this is like cool. Let me get out in front of this one. However, what he is stating there is that there would need to be a full fundamental system redesign, and that there is nothing that is as easy as just make them swappable.
So and that could certainly
them swappable freely is bad for other reasons, right?
So that could certainly be true, right? But like, that's not what he didn't say. If we need to, we can do a full system redesign. He said, if we need to, we have a ripcord. It's there, right? Those are two statements they cannot exist together in the same universe and both be true, right?
I think that he should not have said that on the Mike Preach.
Right. So and there's the thing, right? Like
I think that he should have literally never have said that to begin with. I felt like that whenever I heard him say that the first time, I knew it was a colossal mistake to even give that moment of doubt where people are like, wait, there's an out here. I knew that as soon as he said that was a colossal mistake. But
and to be fair, like there doesn't have to be malice for that either, right? Like you can just say that because and be wrong and not be trying to like lie.
Exactly.
Like,
I think that's
if you do like an hour-long interview with somebody, there's a good chance that you're going to say something that you're like, okay, I shouldn't have said that afterwards. Like it's hard.
Oh, definitely.
It's very hard to avoid those. So certainly the ripcord thing that was when it was first said, like that, it could well have just been a mistake to say that. But they benefited from, like, the reason it was said was because everybody was really worried about the Covenant system, right? And so they basically said, don't be worried because we can change it if we need to, right? Because we have this ripcord if we need it.
Then he used the term ripcord there, and I think that whenever he initially said that, I think he was feeling like if we need to, we could fully redesign the system. We could pull that ripcord. But what people interpreted that as meaning is that they had like some secondary solution, which is
because that's how he said. He said, if we need to, we have it. It's there. There's a ripcord.
All right, well, it was clearly fucking wrong. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, of course, anybody who expected the Covenant system to get changed before the expansion actually launched, it definitely looked like that was not going to happen. I was hopeful, and I think that there was a possibility, but it was definitely a long shot. I hope we can get it though for 9.1 because I think that so much of the other stuff in this expansion is just so awesome, and there are a lot of people I know who loved the idea of covenants, and then some fraction of those people got beta access, and all the ones I know who got beta access and have actually played with it now are on team, not like this. Now,
not like this.
So I feel like there are a lot of people who love the idea of covenants that has been sold to them, but once they actually play it, are going to be also on this team, and so that will be what we need to cause this to get changed in 9.1.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Certainly,
other stuff in that post is actually really good. Basically, literally everything else.
Everything else definitely owns. So Alt leveling is going to be sweet in Shadowlands.
Strictly better.
Yeah, so your second guy, you can either just level through the storyline again, or you could just start doing endgame, basically, and you get that choice, and the story just gets completed for you, and you can just start doing endgame and level up at the same time. That seems awesome.
That's awesome. That's like Diablo adventure mode.
It does seem strictly better.
Really nice.
If you're a player out there who's interested in min-maxing, you should probably choose the option that lets you start getting renown while leveling instead of, like, you want to do those two processes together instead of sequentially. Yes. So unless you really need that practice time with the Covenant abilities or whatever, which is not even going to be that, like, that doesn't even tell you that much because it doesn't give you access to all the conduits and soulbinds and stuff, but you should probably choose that second option for your alts. It will be a more efficient way. You will need less /played time to reach the same level of progression by choosing that option. So do pick that one if you're trying to min-max, but if you just want to play the story again, it's nice that there's an option for you to do that, because picking that second option means you can't do the story again. It just finishes the story, and you get to like a post-story phase of Shadowlands. Torghast is also getting there's actually some really, really sweet news from Torghast so far. So they basically are trying to change it so that it doesn't feel like a super long tutorial. You just have like one tutorial quest now, and then you just do Torghast runs and your quests at the same time, and they hopefully don't feel too tutorial-y.
Very good.
Then we do 6 full Torghast runs before, and then you get to actually do one real one after that. It took a long time.
Yeah, and so now you still have to do those quests, but they're in real Torghast runs now, basically, I think is how it's going to work. And there's also the Twisting Corridors, which is going to be the challenge mode wing of Torghast. 18 floor runs, higher level of difficulty, and cosmetic rewards for clearing certain thresholds. Awesome.
Excellent.
Love the sound of that. Then there was even some more Torghast news that I'll try to find now about seasonal Torghasty stuff.
In that PvP, or in that post, there was also something about PvP itemization, where they're talking about potentially revamping and bringing back another PvP stat, which is, thank fucking God for PvPers, because I think that PvP had like the worst time this expansion trying to grind PvE gear.
Yeah, I feel like the general heuristic should be that you shouldn't need to PvE to PvP, and you shouldn't need to PvP to PvE. Like, yep. I feel like the rewards from one should be usable in the other, but they shouldn't be like mandatory Gigabyss items.
Gigabyss is, I think, the
like, they can be Byss, here. Just they shouldn't be like hugely outclassing the alternatives. Yeah,
over like a 1% gain is like kind of questionable even. I have a question. So, do you guys think that Blizzard has a problem with consistent philosophy designs on a lot of their systems?
I would say that the systems change frequently from expansion to, like, the philosophy changes a lot, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's just like pendulum design, right?
Where so sometimes you get stuff that are relics of the past that doesn't coincide with the current standing philosophy, but coincide with the philosophy previously.
Like, changing things every expansion, or changing things every 2 expansions, can be just good. Like, it's just good to to keep the game fresh.
Keep the game fresh. Yeah.
I do think there are definitely times where parts of the design are inconsistent with each other. Like, I
was thinking drums. Like, they literally left drums in the game, but removed all class specific utility from every class except for drums. And I'm just like, well, why would you even leave that in? Like, you remove engineering battle res, but you leave drums.
Drums is more of the
battle res is arguably more mandatory utility.
Yeah, but the drums is more of a, like, that has been a thing in WoW for longer, right? It's more of a kind of iconic leatherworking thing.
Okay, that's fair.
And to me, like, patch content.
To me, like, Lifefoots on a 1-minute CD are pretty iconic, because I've had that the entire time I played the game in Mythic Plus.
So iconic.
I really feel like it's a big part of my toolkit, honestly.
That's it's totally fair. Yeah.
I just don't know how to use the word iconic.
No, I mean, it is kind of like M+ has been characterized by tanks, getting that purple ball under their feet and yeeting around.
It's really iconic.
That purple ball has saved so many situations.
Iconic's Master Looter. Bring that shit back.
Yeah, Master Loot's another big one.
Honestly, fully tradable personal loot would have been
that's the move. Yeah,
that's even better than Master Looter. Fully tradable PL is, but the current PL we have is not good.
It is very annoying as a mage to loot a Psyche Shredder, let me tell you. You're just like, I would like to give this to the Shadow Priest who needs it badly, but I have 2 trinkets that are 40 item levels below this thing that are dramatically better than it, so I cannot trade.
Alas.
Yeah.
True.
Sag.
My biggest gripe though is that they have good specs every once in a while. Like BFA Prot Warrior is well designed. I think it's actually like a good tank spec, and instead of bringing other tanks up, they just destroy the good one. And I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they would keep the good specs and change the bad specs instead.
Dude, BFA Prot Warrior has been, for anybody who hasn't followed what's happened on beta, it is gone. It has been like Thanos snapped out of existence. Yeah, completely nothing is there from the BFA version of Prot Warrior anymore.
Yeah. I made my UI for it yesterday finally, and I was like, oof. You have like 12 seconds of shield block, and then you're dead.
Yeah, yeah. It was very much. I mean, just taking away the last stand block is so. It's so rough.
Bolster no longer exists.
Yeah.
Bolster exists, but it's on the same row as anger management.
Okay,
and
so
anger
Bolster no longer
management
exists.
Yeah, basically. I mean, you might have to take it just to play the class and live, but then you wouldn't have anger management, and then everything's on like a 2-minute, 3-minute CD permanently.
Dude, I feel like anger management is just so iconic to that class, like or that spec even. It's just.
So yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Trell, that like they create a lot of work for themselves by like every once in a while they create these specs that perform really well, and then they nerf them. And I think nerfing the numbers on them, making sure that they're not OP is reasonable, but like breaking apart those fun play patterns that work really well, and it creates more work for them because they just have to keep making new good specs instead of being able to piggyback on the old good ones they made.
I wish we would have gotten a full talent overhaul. I feel like the talent system is just so busted right now. There are a lot of classes that just like have mandatory talents that have been iconic for their class all this time, and then they'll do a talent shift where they'll put like 2 iconic / mandatory talents on the same row. I mean, Moonkin has it.
Or 3 for Prot Warrior.
Yeah, the Prot Warrior one's the tier 100 rows. Like, what the fuck is that, man?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get it. I just like they could nerf it. They could just nerf the numbers and keep all their cool synergy working together specs like that in place. But I do get it from their perspective. Like nerfing one thing is definitely easier than buffing 5 other things, especially talking about tanks, which unfortunately is the way it has to go, I think, with a huge project like World of Warcraft expansions.
Yeah, I definitely have seen the sentiment a lot on Twitter that like a lot of people feel like their specs are not particularly fun right now, and that is. I don't know. That's kind of a fundamental thing about World of Warcraft, right? Is if your spec is fun, kind of doesn't matter what else is going on. It's a fun game, and if your spec isn't fun, it kind of doesn't matter what else is going on. It's not a fun game, right? So hopefully they land better here. And of course, it always feels bad to go from like Giga Gear 8.3 corruption, your character does anything you want it to like fresh expansion, you have no stats. So like to some extent that's always going to be a feeling at the start of an expansion, but. I hope that it doesn't turn out to be that way for most specs. All right, let's circle back a little bit to Torghast because we have some Torghast events that are happening on beta, and I really like the direction of these. So these are these 3 different events that it looks like during Shadowlands they'll be active for a length of time, and so like the first is Beasts of Prodigum. Your first Maw Power chest allows you to gain control of a powerful Maw beast, and then subsequent Maw powers you receive have the chance to modify the beast and grant it special abilities. And then there's one that lets you turn into a Dead Soul Chorus, and then subsequent powers enhance that. And then there's one that says, your first Maw Power chest can grant you a Vial of Darkness you can activate. Using it turns your screen completely dark. You are unable to see your surroundings. You gain large combat bonuses, and then subsequent Maw Power chest enhance your combat bonuses or modify the darkness. Which
sounds pretty cool.
It sounds so cool. Yeah, I think this is a really cool way to keep Torghast fresh. It's just like they just give you a new thing to build your whole Torghast run around at the start of each go. I don't know. I'm hyped. I'm hyped for Torghast looking like this. Like seasonality in Torghast, I think is going to be a great way to keep it fresh.
Better than it is currently, where it's like island expeditions, except the vertical version.
Well, like horrific visions, I would say.
The vertical horrific version, all right, for sure.
Yeah, which
horrific visions rotations are like negative affixes, right? But these are positive rotating affixes. I feel
these are definitely more roguelike than horrific visions were.
All right, let's go through some of the last things we have in this Ian post before we finish up our shows. We talked about the alt leveling. We talked about Torghast. We talked about covenants. We talked about PvP itemization. Let's close out with sockets. So,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, big news is sockets can now only go in helms, rings, so that's 2, necks, bracers, and belts. So there are only 6 slots on your gear that can have a socket go into them in Shadowlands. They will still randomly generate, and in those slots, for the most part, they're probably worth maybe 10 or 15 item levels. They're probably about as impactful as like a Titanforge. But they are also going to be purchasable and through a similar system to the Gouged Eye of N'Zoth. So you can either drop your items with sockets or you can add them to your gear, and there's only those 6 slots that can have them.
I mean, this is good, but it feels weird to be held hostage by jewel crafting. The reason that sockets haven't been removed is because jewel crafting is a major profession where they're not really willing to get rid of it. So we're being all held hostage by jewel crafting, so sockets have to exist. I don't know why gear doesn't just drop with them sockets on the baseline. Seems like that'd make way more sense. Like, why don't those slots just drop
Always
with
have a
sockets
socket?
on them? Yeah, like.
Yeah, weird. I don't know. A jewel crafting rework, I think, could be a welcome way to free us from the socket hell.
Yeah. Help, I'm being held hostage by jewel crafting. Please, dude, get me out.
Yeah.
I personally enjoy a little bit of a grind. Like, after you get your best mythic gear, you can go add the sockets to it. I enjoy that. And like finishing out your character manually.
Yeah, so I love the either loot or grind gets you sockets. Like you either get lucky and you get a socket, or you can grind and get a socket. Great. I think that all the like random RNG item problems that the game has had would basically be solved by having an equivalent system to that. So
yeah,
love to see that happening just at launch, because normally what happens is the system launches with too much RNG, and then they add the deterministic ways to get it, or they add the bad luck protection, or they increase the drop rates over time. But here it's just launching with the deterministic way to get the sockets on release. The one thing I'm curious about is what will happen in 9.1, because I would like to not have an incentive to have 30 of these in my bags to socket all my gear on Heroic Week and then all my Mythic gear over progression.
The chalk cost fallacy.
So I hope that there's been some thought about what will happen in 9.1. There's a lot of different ways that it could work and be fine, and I hope they've picked one of them.
Some say THD and Flex are already farming them off for sockets for 9.1.
Yeah.
They've already like built up fucking 600 million resource.
Dude, that's you've heard those stories of THD at Race to World First events, right? Where like the race is over and everybody else is just like hanging out or whatever, and THD is just there farming mana pearls or farming like Echoes of N'Zoth or whatever, or just like in island expeditions, like after they've already got World First.
Farming rep to try to get Breath of the Dying rank 3 and shit.
Farming like necklace level. THD is like neck level 100 at this point in time. He hasn't missed a world quest that gives AP in I think all of 2020. It's
he's now ascended.
That's terrible.
It's a wild time.
That's so unfun.
He's having fun.
I would hate. I don't play the same game as him. Yeah. Very clearly.
I hope that they fix the Covenant balance so that he can pick Kyrian so he can actually ascend in game as well.
Dude, the Kyrian is right now there's a nice flashbang that happens when you die if you're a Kyrian.
Can we talk about this shitty flashbang that you get every single time?
So for those who don't know, when you die, there's now a Covenant specific animation when you click Release Spirit. For Venthyr, it's like a red misty thing. For Nightfey, it's like a blue glowy thing. For I don't even know what it is for Necrolord. I think it's like a dark greeny thing. And for Kyrian, it's just like this bright white flashbang that just
because it's the colors of the Covenant, right?
Yeah.
It just
for Venthyr, it's literally a butthole. Like you get like a big just asshole on your screen. Like I don't even understand, man. Like the first time I saw, it, I was like, what is going on?
For the Carrion one, yeah, it's gonna be tough for me to play Carrion because like I'm a dark mode user, right? I like sitting here when I'm not streaming, or sometimes when I am streaming, but when I'm not doing like podcasting, like my lights are out, like I'm full, gamer mode here, and like just having my screen turn bright white every time I die. It's actually not going to impact me at all, but if I ever did die, it would be really annoying.
Okay, try does.
Release spirit.
Yeah.
Every time you wake up, you get flashbanged with that thing.
Dude, I'm just gonna start calling for reses. They're just gonna be like, run back. I'll be like, no.
Res me.
Dude, my
I
eyeballs.
wish to not be flashbang.
Yeah.
I'm too tired.
So I don't know. It is kind of cool though, but also why? My eyeballs. Ow.
Maybe they introduced the flashbang so that when people have to run back because there's no checkpoint in the instance, it kind of wakes them up so they can get back to their body faster. Because otherwise, you like wait 5 minutes for everyone to run back to the last area, and you're like you kind of asleep by the time everyone gets there.
So instead, now I wait 5 seconds for that shit to get off my screen so I could actually start moving again.
Yeah, and then another 10 seconds for your eyes to readjust if you played Carrion. Yeah, it's cool. It's fun. All right, we've got some Q&A to get to, but first, we get to thank our supporters over at patreon.com for supporting our show. Thanks very much to all the following. Paul of US Proudmore. Congrats Riley on Cutting Edge and Nazoth Mount. Congratulations to our queen Anastasia, Azeroth's champion. Delete DH says, well, based on the blue post this week, the Shadowlands beta will finally be done in 10.1. Just Gopher. Some kid that is enjoying all the content Tettles has been pumping out. King of Skills, Zuko, Ja, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Dawn EU. I wish I was Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Never Nude, Chewy. Dude, there's that block in the middle of our Patreon names that just nobody in that block has like changed their name ever. It's just the same thing every week. It's so nice.
True.
So nice not having to do some critical thinking about what the next thing is.
Name.
Yeah.
Name.
Taunting elites through Toldagor's loosely enclosure sucks, or Tettles. It's a nice acronym. Lufer of US Wormrest Accord. BFA is so dead that Ellesmere is streaming Modern Warfare.
True.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Mugatu, Sen of US Kill Jaden. Dazboot, better mage lead than Tal. Brought to you by Dranos the Excel Wizard, Brad Ceratops. Gino, the 24th best DH on Thrall. Necris. Will Blizzard care about balance, class identity, and agency? Shadow Priest can pump if you chain pull, just give him a chance. Nevik, Sinmora, rather. Eevee, Frosty K new meta. Gino, please get that timeline to me by Monday because I have a meeting with Federico about it. Take Light of the Protector and Rage Regen off the GCD. Woe Bonesy no verse. No Trick, Vamp of Storm Rage. I unscheduled a Tettle's Flame. Vesuvius and Glade need to choose a main. Is it now canon that Guardian Druid is dead?
That shit's dead.
Feels bad, man.
That's a nice meme about the Afterlives Ardenwald lore video. Yeah.
Not only are they dead in game, but they're dead in the lore. Good night.
Very dead.
They're
Good
actually
night.
like now that the two better tanks are nerfed, Guardians are actually more balanced. That's one positive thing about it. Although I wish all of us wish all 6 tanks were better.
Ursoc is gone though, bro.
Yeah.
Ursoc is gone. Feels bad.
Very deceased. Dymat, Sync OCE Podling, Vinianix. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it.
I don't know.
Vinianix.
The note attached to that one is I want to see how you guys pronounce it. So
okay, well, I tried my best. Heltari, Ishiyu. Dream Team can time any key as long as it's Junkyard. Been there. Henry is going to pump in Shadowlands, or Hanny is going to pump in Shadowlands. Not Henry. That's a different name. Nyx, Xylic. My brother needs to play more and stop being a noob. Thanks all of you for your support. Sorry for the names I butchered. All right, let's move on to our Q&A section. Absolution Plays from Twitch chat asks us, how hard do you think a plus 15 should be?
So it gives cosmetic rewards, right? And is 15 is the baseline for the highest item level reward, basically base mythic level gear, right?
I think that in Shadowlands it's a 10, but I'm not sure.
I don't know why I believe it was a 15.
It could be a
I
15.
want to say it's 10 as well. I'm not sure though.
Okay.
They did do testing scaling up to 15, and that's where it stopped. So maybe it is 15.
Okay. Anyways, how hard should a 15 be? Well, 15 right now is the current highest tier of cosmetic rewards. I don't know, man. I feel like 15 should be about the equivalent of like the first few bosses of Mythic. Not like it doesn't need to be insane.
I think that. So yeah, it depends. Like they kind of do this inflation thing where like at the start of an expansion, a 10 is hard and like a 15 is giga hard, and then like at the end of an expansion, a 15 is like pretty. You know, in Legion they did this multiple times where like 10 is the reward level, and then the next patch 15 is the reward level, and then the next patch, okay, we've squished all the numbers, 10's the level again. BFA, they tried to avoid doing that. They tried to just have it be 10 the whole way through, and then they scuffed it a little bit at the end and had to bring it up to 15. I don't know.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I feel like 15, if a 10 is the loot ceiling, 15 should be pretty hard. And if a 15 is the loot ceiling, it should not be as hard as that then. Like it should be, you know, pretty doable.
But like I guess the question is like if it's the loot ceiling, should it be as hard as like the first couple of bosses on Mythic?
I don't think so.
Less hard? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to directly compare difficulty between Mythic bosses and Mythic Plus.
Mythic Plus is so substantially more dynamic, right?
Yeah. But I think wherever you get the best loot from should be pretty doable. And then put a cosmetic reward higher than the loot ceiling and have that be like challenging.
Okay, that's fair.
I feel like as a heroic item level group, like on average, I think you should be able to walk straight through a dungeon and chest it comfortably on a 15, but with just like 4 to 5 minutes remaining. So like you have some room for error, but not a lot if you're not into Mythic Plus that much.
Yeah, if you do like safe pulls, you should only get like one wipe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good spot for balancing dungeons. I think if you're a full Mythic item level team, you should be able to 2-chest a dungeon doing that, so that it's like accurate scaling with loot going up, and then that allows Mythic Plus to scale at a reasonable pace, in my opinion.
Sure.
Farrelly Meta asks, is it easier to level 4 druids than multi-spec 1? Probably not.
Oof.
I'm gonna go probably no, yeah.
I mean, if you want to play 4 different specs in the same week, like, yeah, that is impossible with the current system, unless you're willing to just give up conduits on one of those specs. But I don't know. I think
4 of them is too many, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, playing 4 specs at a really high level is not something that a lot of people do. It's certainly nice to have the option, and it's sad that option is going away for druids. But it is going to be like leveling 4 druids and gearing 4 druids is a big pain. It is not something that I think most people should put themselves through. Yes, it is the only way to play. Like, if you want to play geared mythic level Guardian, Resto, Feral, and Boomkin in the same week, like every week, yeah, you can't. You literally can't do that if you with the current system. That's not an option. You can't do that more than one. Like, you can do that the first week because you get your 1 conduit swap, but you can't do it the second week because now your conduit swap back. Like, it's not gonna work out for you. So it is the only way to do some kinds of content, but I would not recommend it. I would just say just don't bother. Like, that's real.
Yeah, I agree.
Under no circumstances should a normal person be leveling.
4 is wrong. Like,
even 2
is. Yeah.
2 is like,
want to do.
There are some cases where people play 2 of a certain class already, and like some people don't mind it, but for most players, I would say even playing 2 of the same class is like, it's really not. And that's the big thing about, like, what people always ask, like, how are you okay with Paladin having some utility that Warlock doesn't have, but you're not okay with Kyrian having some utility that Venthyr doesn't have? And the answer is that, like, if I want to level and play a Warlock, that is a different experience from my Paladin.
Class.
And so, like, it does not feel awful to have access to both of those by playing both of them, but it does feel awful to have access to Kyrian and Venthyr by leveling 2 rogues. Like, that's not the way.
Subclasses are not the move.
Subclasses could work, but subclasses should be actual subclasses that feel different instead of having 1 different button and a couple different passives. That's not enough difference to justify being a subclass, but the system has as much friction put in as a subclass system would.
Yeah, sure.
All right, next question comes from Atork. Insights on professions besides crafting ones. Is engineering still worth picking up without a combat res? If yes, why?
I'll feel this. Yes, engineering is still worth picking up. Engineering has a belt tinker that allows you to actually have a stealth, so engineering is going to be slightly more valuable than if it didn't.
Yeah, for Mythic Plus is what we're talking about, right? Like
for Mythic Plus specifically. I mean, for Raid, you can get away with not having it at all. Honestly, if you play like Druid or something that has like a native stealth camouflage, Rogue, whatever, you don't need it either. But
Rogue, I would say you still want it for the knife, like the out of combat res.
That's true.
The army knife, yeah. There's also the goggles you can craft for each spec. Could potentially be good stats or something. Can you choose specs or choose stats on those?
I think so. Yeah, I think you can choose stats on like all crafted stuff in Shadowlands. You just use those missives.
But yeah, you can still at least like build a headpiece for yourself. So there's still benefits for sure.
Yeah, I mean that benefit is similar to what you could get from another profession, though. You get like a leatherworking thing, an alchemy trinket, or whatever. But yeah, I would say engineering. True. Like, I mean, there's also like there's all kinds of weird stuff that engineering brings that is valuable, like target dummies. Those are those have been good
advanced
against
advanced targeting dummy. Yeah,
there's a lot of niche weird engineering stuff that might be good. So I would also you can tinker a Goblin Glider kit onto your cloak, which is mega pog. All right, next one comes from Buster, who asks, how many characters are we thinking about playing and maintaining early in Shadowlands?
Trell?
I did 3 in BFA, and that was a mistake.
Too many?
Work off, and
yeah.
Like doing world quests on 3 characters every day, trying to do every single world quest is not for me. I did it for a little bit and wanted to die, so this time I'm doing 2.
There's a lot less of that in Shadowlands than there was in BFA, to be fair. Like the world quest grind is largely optional in Shadowlands. It's like there's some weekly stuff that's tied to power level that you should do, but there's not really daily commitments that are like that. You can do them to build your sanctum up, but there's not really any reason to do that for power level. Like you don't need to.
Yeah, and if it's easy enough, I'll probably level a 3rd one the first week, but I'll have to feel it out first.
Yeah, I would advise start with a small number and then add more as you feel comfortable, rather than biting off a lot to start with as well. Like I start most expansions with like 1 main. In BFA, I didn't have a second character at max level for like 6 months into the expansion or something. And then by the end of the expansion, I've got like all the classes at max level, and I've played like most of them quite a bit. So I think that's kind of a natural progression curve throughout the expansion. Start with 1 guy and then branch out from there.
I'm gonna do 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I will probably do more than 1, of course, because I'm a full-time gamer. But start with the low estimate of the number you might want. Like if you think you might want 2 to 4 characters, start with 2.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
from
good.
there. All right, that's our Q&A segment gotten through. That's our whole show gotten through. Thanks everybody for joining us. Once again, we'll not be here next week. We've got the Keystone Masters tournament. Tune in twitch.tv/Keystone Masters to that one to see Trell compete and myself and Tettles cast. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for episode 65. Later, everybody.
Later.